across the UK, online and on DAB.
The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
On Talk Radio, we'll get you talking.
Listener comrades of the world, unite! He's a weapon of mass discussion, and he's back on your radio.
Get ready for a revolutionary rumble on your radio with the original George of the political jungle.
Galloway, celebrate the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway. Come have a go if you think you're hard enough. Get it? On the radio station that gives power to the people.
Talk Radio, we'll get you talking.
Yes, Top Cat is back. Usually every Friday night between 7 and 10. But this week, in Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, covering for the Gold Brothers. Well, it's all on the slates. It was all for somebody called Angela Eagle, a woman who has as much chance of defeating Jeremy Corbyn in the great election battle that will now ensue as, well, no chance. Absolutely none at all. Remember, you heard it here first. Neither she nor Tom Watson, or even the two of them standing on each other's shoulders, can measure up to Jeremy Corbyn. It is a doomed, self-disfiguring act, and I'm going to say so right now.
Listener comrades of the world, unite! The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
On Talk Radio, we'll get you talking.
Okay, I'm actually looking at the Sky News screen, and Alastair Campbell, as he has been all day, is in that studio, as he's been in every studio, knifing Jeremy Corbyn in the back. And just before he was on, somebody called Jack Straw was on doing the same thing. Jack Straw was described as a senior party figure. Why wasn't he described as a man who next week, will be utterly devastated by the multi-million-pound and many years of the Chilcot inquiry? I'll tell you, what kind of a coup is it that puts up Alastair Campbell and Jack Straw to speak for it? The people who are guilty as sin for all the crimes of the Iraq War and all the devastation that followed it. If ever there was an indicator of a coup that is doomed, it's a coup that chooses Alastair Campbell and Jack Straw as its peripatetic studio creepers to speak for it. So I'm in no doubt now whatsoever that Angela Eagle is going down to a very heavy landslide defeat at the hands of Jeremy Corbyn. So I'm actually going to move the conversation on a little bit. Because why have they done this? Boris Johnson has just said there will not be an early election if he's the leader. So if the coup was predicated upon the panic to get a new leader in place before Corbyn had a chance to become the Prime Minister, that just went down in flames. If the coup was predicated upon a big figure coming forward, an Andy Burnham, an Yvette Cooper coming forward as a potential Labour leader to contest this position with Jeremy Corbyn, that just went down in flames too. I mean, really? Angela Eagle? The woman that burst into tears in public on television just 2 days ago because she had such a heavy heart at doing what she was doing? Angela Eagle, whose own constituency, Labour Party, passed overwhelmingly a resolution at the weekend demanding that she support Jeremy Corbyn in the vote of no confidence today. 172 self-inflated, with a sense of entitlement that knows no bounds. 172 people today decided that they could overthrow a guy who just 9 months ago got 250,000 votes from Labour's members. And by the way, there's been a doubling of the size of the Labour Party since then. And I promise you, they didn't all join so they could get rid of Jeremy Corbyn. Certainly not for Angela Eagle. So, what's it all about, Alfie? What was this all about? Well, I know what it's about for Campbell and for Jack Straw, with Chilcot just round the corner. It's about setting fires everywhere so that you could throw up enough smoke to obscure the vision, the ugly sight that you're going to see in the Chilcot Inquiry report. That's what they're in it for. But what about the other 172 placemen and women? Virtually none of whom you could name. I look at the lists of these MPs, including the shadow cabinet. I tell you this, there is no Labour shadow cabinet in its entire history of 100 years, none in which any of these people could have found a place. As I said to you last night, the Labour shadow cabinet in 1973, Harold Wilson, James Callaghan, Roy Jenkins, Dennis Healy, Tony Benn, Michael Foot, Richard Crossman, Barbara Castle, Richard Crossland. I could go on. Every one of them a potential Prime Minister. Look at the political pygmies that are resigning. People you never heard of, resigning from positions you never knew they held. It is farcical. It is pathetic. It would be laughable if it did not represent an absolute betrayal of the working people of Britain, the Labour movement in Britain, the hundreds of thousands of Labour members in Britain. So what's going to happen next? When Jeremy Corbyn secures a landslide victory in this coming leadership election, how are these people now going to look him in the face? How are they going to look their own voters in the face, their own constituency party members in the face? Are they going to ask for their pettifogging jobs back as the parliamentary private secretary to the undersecretary for paper clips? Are they going to ask for their jobs back? Or are they going to sit on the back benches and rot for the rest of their time in Parliament? I'll tell you what I think they're going to do. And moreover, what they should do. They should have the courage of their convictions. They should tell us now how they voted today. And they should tell us what they're going to do when they lose. And I'll tell you what they should do. They should form up with the people they're really comfortable with. Because they don't want any real connection to the trade unions, to the Labour members, to Jeremy Corbyn. They're much more comfortable with the brothel creepers across the other side of the aisle in the House of Commons. Let's have a reconfiguration of British politics. Let's have everyone put their cards on the table. And those Remainiacs in the Parliamentary Labour Party who want to blame Jeremy Corbyn because the EU that they so love is so hated in the country, let them go and sit on the other side of the chamber with the other Remainiacs in the Liberal Democrats and in the Conservative Party. Now let's talk about the Conservative Party. Stephen Crabb is sidling up to the starting line. Liam Fox is on the hunt. Jeremy Hunt, well, I better be careful in case I have a slip of the tongue. He's thinking about it too. Theresa May. But there's actually only one candidate, isn't there? It's Boris Johnson. It's Boris Johnson. He is so obviously head and shoulders above the others that he has to be the Tory candidate. So much so, he's just decided there isn't going to be a general election. Well, not if I've got anything to say about it. I utterly reject the idea that a Prime Minister unelected by the British people should go into these negotiations and negotiate the terms of our withdrawal from the European Union. Boris Johnson has to go before the people and face a general election, or he will have no mandate to negotiate on our behalf. The Liberal Democrats have made quite a cute move. That Tim Farron, or Farron, whatever his name is, That's quite a cute move. The Liberal Democrats are going to stand as the only party in Britain at the general election on the platform of applying to rejoin the European Union. Of course, when you rejoin the European Union, as any new member, well, you have to join the Eurozone. So good luck with that, Tim. But at least he'll have 16 million people amongst whom he can tout for votes, although he might not be as successful or in persuading the 16 million that actually we should rejoin and we should join the Eurozone because, hey, Tim, how's the Eurozone going? And then we've got the return of the sage that is John Le Boutillier. For many long years, listeners to my show were treated to this wonderful man with a wonderful voice, a former Republican congressman who knows everything there is to know about U.S. politics and who tells you like it is. We'll be talking about the U.S. election, about the Tory leadership election, and about the farce that is the coup against Jeremy Corbyn.
Controversial conversation and cutting-edge current affairs comment with the notorious B.I.G.G.
The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway
On Talk Radio.
Listen, this guy's a nightmare. He's not a great guy, folks.
Well, 0844 499 1000. That's the number to call. 0844 499 1000. I'm taking your calls and your emails via the website at talkradio.co.uk. I'm taking your texts, text talk, plus your message to 87222. Or you can tweet us at Talk Radio or at George Galloway. And some tweets are coming in. Some incredible oratory from George Galloway on Talk Radio just now. Superb appraisal of the traitors, says John Leng. The Essex Socialist says, seriously, George Galloway cracks me up, passionate as ever on Talk Radio. The other, Harry Cole, says, now I see why you left New Labour. How can anyone honestly work with these snakes in the grass? Hashtag keep Corbyn. And Rotten Borough says, George Galloway is kicking ass on Talk Radio right now, slaying Blairites for fun. And he's only just starting. Well, you've probably heard enough from me for the time being. So let me introduce my first guest, my old friend, an even older Labour warhorse than me, although he's in pretty good nick, actually, the last time I saw him. He is the former Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hi, George.
So that's what it was all about, a contest with somebody called Angela Eagle. It's not going to work, is it?
No, I mean, the simple fact is that Jeremy reached out to all these people. He offered them jobs when he became leader. He allowed a free vote on Syria, although he didn't believe that any bombing should be right. We're headed towards a free vote on Trident. He's been an incredibly tolerant leader who's tried to assemble a coalition behind him. And then I've been talking about Labour MPs stabbing him in the back for months, but now they're stabbing him in the front.
Yeah.
Clearly there will be a leadership election, but Jeremy will be re-elected, and these old Blairite embittered MPs have got to decide you either get behind the man the Labour leadership membership chose, or go off and find another party, join UKIP or something.
Well, they might go off, and we'll come to that, but I don't know if you heard my talk-up, but the news agenda, the screens that I'm looking at, are filled with the faces of Alistair Campbell and Jack Straw. What kind of a coup chooses Alistair Campbell and Jack Straw as their studio creepers? I mean, that's insanity days before Chilcot.
Well, the ridiculous thing here is that so many of these embittered old Blairite MPs can't come to terms with the fact that Britain has rejected Blair's New Labour. The party membership overwhelmingly rejected it in electing Jeremy Corbyn, and they just can't seem to come to terms with it. And it's not just the invasion of Iraq and the horrible war. It's the fact that for 13 years we had a New Labour government. It didn't rebuild our manufacturing base. It didn't build good council homes for ordinary people that they could afford. this anger amongst working class people that led them to vote to leave the EU is because the last Labour government failed to actually look out for ordinary people.
Well, let me put a point to you that I haven't heard made yet, even by myself. It's the first time it's come to me listening to you speaking. Neither did that Blair-Brown Labour government give trade unions back the rights that would have allowed them to defend workers' wages and conditions that have been absolutely undermined over this last period and helped fuel the referendum result.
Yeah, this is, in a sense, I don't think we noticed it at the time. Well, we didn't notice it at the time. But following Blair's election as Labour leader, effectively, the Labour Party was taken over. Blair didn't let local parties choose the candidates they wanted anymore. They had to go for an approved list. The multi-millionaire David Sainsbury started funding a group called Progress secretly. And the objective of that, a bit like when the militant tendency tried to take over the Labour Party, effectively the Labour Party was taken over by the interests of big business, international corporations. So Blair didn't crack down on tax avoidance, didn't give workers back the powers that they used to have before Thatcher smashed the unions. And this is why people are angry here, just like they're angry in America and voting for Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump.
Exactly. Now, let's look ahead, because I think we both know that Jeremy is going to win a big victory and therefore will continue as the leader. So what do these people who have performed this ridiculous farce, what do they do then? How can they look Jeremy in the face? Do they ask for their jobs as parliamentary private secretary to the Undersecretary for Paperclips back again? How do they look Jeremy in the face? How do they look the Labour movement in the face after having done this?
Well, you and I were both in Parliament. We know what little hothouse it is. It's so disconnected from the real world. These MPs live in a little sphere floating above the real world. I mean, their lives are secure. I mean, if they got a comfortable Labour majority, they got jobs for life because, Blair did away with the automatic reselection that allowed people to get rid of Labour MPs that weren't any good. And I just don't think they're connecting with ordinary people. The idea that people voted to leave the European Union because Jeremy didn't campaign is absolute nonsense. Jeremy was out there every day campaigning, but the bias of the Tory media, they never reported what he was doing. I mean, it was all about Dave Cameron and Boris Johnson gnawing at each other's testicles.
Well, his initials are JC, but he would have had to be the real JC in order to win some of the 17 million people whose lives have gotten worse and worse over these last decades. But I suppose what I'm getting at, and none of us know the answer to this, but I have a suspicion that this will prefigure a realignment in British politics, because we both know that these Blairites have far more in common with the Liberal Democrats and with the soft wing, the left wing, the wets in the Conservative Party than they ever have had with you and me and Corbyn and the working class movement, trade unions, shop stewards and so on. They don't know what a shop steward is. They think Swarfiga is a Greek island.
Well, you see, part of the problem is, I don't think they'd even be acceptable to the Lib Dems. The Lib Dems, after the awful 5 years of Nick Clegg just being a patsy for Cameron and Osborne and their awful austerity measures, they've turned their back on that. I think if you were looking for a realignment, and I think it is possible it will happen, it would be the pro-European Tories lining up with the old Blairites. So you've got a corporate party, a party there for the interests of international big business, a party that isn't going to make Google and Starbucks and Amazon pay their fair share of tax. And they'll be well funded by those big corporations. But, I think Jeremy will absolutely romp home at the next general election, because for the first time since John Smith died, there's a Labour leader who is genuinely there for ordinary people.
And seen as honest and sincere. All these people that were resigning were telling us what a fine and principled man he was. Honest and principled, they said. But it seems they prefer an unprincipled liar to an honest and principled man.
Well, also when you look at some of these people, now causing all this trouble, I mean, there will be real shock amongst the Labour Party rank and file, because here you've got a Tory party that's imploding, a Tory Prime Minister forced out, a horrendous contest between Theresa May and Boris Johnson coming up, and here are these Labour MPs suddenly pushing all of that off the agenda and opening a civil war in the Labour Party. I think people will ask, do you actually really want a Labour government? I mean, if so, why are you betraying us?
Well, that's right. I mean, they claim that getting a Labour government, being electable, is the only thing that matters to them. And yet their behaviour completely belies that. When they did all this, they thought there was going to be an election coming up almost tomorrow, in October. Johnson's just ruled it out tonight, although he might not be able to hold that line. But they were actually going to prepare for a British general election by tearing themselves and the Labour Party apart.
I think the really shocking thing about all of this is that these people saw Jeremy elected by the biggest landslide we've ever had. And for the first time, ordinary people able to select the party leader, not the MPs or trade union bloc votes. It was a bit like an American primary process. And they're not prepared to accept that or live with it. And the simple fact is, I mean, Jeremy reached out to them. They have actually spurned that. And I think it's now time, and for people in the Labour Party to start saying, right, if you've got the right and the freedom to pass a motion of censure against your leader, we've got a freedom to get rid of you and select in your place a Labour candidate who will support Jeremy's government, not undermine it.
My thoughts entirely. Ken Livingstone, thanks very much for joining us and kicking off the mother of all talk shows tonight. I'm on tomorrow night again and then back for my normal slot on Friday. My number, as always, is 0844 499 1000. That's 0844 499 1000. So what do you think? Have I got it wrong? Has Ken got it wrong? Are you an eaglet? Are you going to be backing the lachrymose lady who is now running officially against Jeremy Corbyn in the Labour leadership election? Tell me, 0844 499 1000.
He's a weapon of mass discussion, and he's back on your radio. The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
On Talk Radio. We'll get you talking.
0844 499 1000. That's the number to call. You call us, we'll call you back. We're talking about the Labour leadership contest, which will now ensue. We're talking about the runners and riders, hunters all, by one means or another, who are lining up to take David Cameron's job. We'll be talking later across the Atlantic to John Le Boutillier, the sage on US politics, my resident sage for many years, about the Clinton-Trump race, or will it be the Clinton-Trump race? Are there some surprises still to come in all of that? And we'll be talking about Nigel Farage's visit to the European Parliament, in which he has sat for 17 years. He was on our show here last night and then must have headed straight for the European Parliament, where, well, it was a bit of a roughhouse on both sides. You can listen back on the website to my interview with him last night, and later we'll play you some of the actualité of that aforementioned roughhouse in the European Parliament. Let's hear from Dylan in Northwood. Dylan, welcome.
Hi.
Hi, where do you stand?
I just want to say, I'm 15, and as a young voter, I'd just like to say, non-voter, I'd just like to say what an absolute shambles this whole process has been.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that, even 15-year-olds are deemed, not, they don't know enough about the topic of Brexit, that they don't deserve a vote in this referendum was an absolute shambles. I mean,
where would you draw the line, Dylan? 15, 13, 10?
I would draw the line at 16.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm in favour of reducing the voting age for everything to 16, and I always have been.
I mean, if we had reduced the voting age, and I have no doubt Remain would have won any day. And even though I'm a Brexit supporter, You know, I'm one of very few young people who supported Brexit. I mean, most young people support Remain.
Well, so they say, and so the polling evidence suggests. Although I think if you took the camera out amongst the 16-year-olds in Spain, in Portugal, in Greece, in Italy, you would get a very different result. The European Union doesn't look quite so rosy to them.
Yeah, because of Eurozone, obviously.
Well, half of the under 24-year-olds in Spain and in Portugal are unemployed. 40% of the under 24s in Italy are unemployed. And half of the children in Greece are not just unemployed, they're hungry. Hungry, official. So the EU is viewed by young people in Britain through rose-tinted spectacles for all the right reasons. Young people are internationalist. They believe in being able to travel, to interrelate with people in all countries, and they've been persuaded that the only way you can do that is to join a rich man's bosses, bankers club.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And something I also wanted to say was this whole mad power grab, well, that's going on in the Labour Party. All it's doing is it's teaching us young people to despise these politicians. And what it's doing is it's creating, I disagree. I think with when you were on with Ken Livingstone, you talked about, or Ken talked about a realignment. I believe that this is just going to lead to a further gap, especially in our generation, because people are becoming more and more discontent with these supposedly too centrist politicians. And they'd rather more, like we're seeing in America, the rise of more strong politicians, more right-wing, more left-wing politicians.
Well, Dylan, not only do you sound smart enough to vote, to me, you sound smarter than a lot of people that people actually have to vote for. So thanks very much for your call, and don't be a stranger. Call me anytime. 0844 499 1000 is the number to call. Fraser in Nottingham has, and he's up next. Go ahead, Fraser.
Hello, George. How are you?
Yes, by the grace of God, I'm good. Go ahead. What would you like to say?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah.
I really admire him, and like most people, I was really excited when he first came along, and it's continued. And I know a lot of people are sort of saying on social media that their support for him has fallen by the wayside. I'll be interested to see what happens, because I think there'll be just as much support, if not more. And I wanted to ask you as well, because it has been going around on social media, that because of the upcoming by-election in that being circling around, and I wondered...
I'll tell you what, Fraser, we're going to need to get back to you because the line is breaking up. Please forgive me on that. 0844 499 1000 is the number to call. You can email at talkradio.co.uk. You can text TALK and then your message to 87222. That's 87222. Or, of course, the old Twitter at Talk Radio, as well as at George Galloway. If we can, we'll get back to Fraser. But next up is Sarah in Cambridge. Sarah, welcome.
Oh, hello, George. Yes, I'm glad to come on the programme.
Excellent.
I've got 2 points to make. One is, my anger has been mounting all day long, but I started off by thinking, here we are in this period of great uncertainty following the referendum, and what do we have? Our two main political parties tearing each other apart at each other's throats, but particularly the Labour Party turning on their leader, or the Parliamentary Labour Party turning on their leader. And as the day goes on, as the day has gone on, up to 170 parliamentary Labour members of Parliament, predominantly Blairites, have basically stabbed Jeremy Corbyn in the back, done a sort of Julius Caesar job again. And I think, well, what's going on here? It was too blatant. I got too suspicious. And I've been looking, and the coincidence of the Chilcot report coming out imminently and the terror of the Blairites as to what this will mean. They're desperate to get rid of Mr. Corbyn, who will be at the dispatch box when the Chilcot report is debated. And clearly they want somebody like Tom Watson, who was voted for the Iraq War, didn't think there was a problem with, didn't need a Chilcot report. And so I suddenly thought, this is very, very fishy. And before ringing you, I joined the Labour Party, so I shall be there to support Mr. Corbyn.
Well, very good, and a great call, Sarah. Let me tell you what I suspect. I may not be correct on this, but here's what I suspect. That they will have already, by this device, removed Jeremy Corbyn from the dispatch box when Chilcot comes out, because it seems to me that as soon as there is a leadership challenge mounted, the leader makes way for the deputy leader, that oh-so-loyal Tom Watson, who supported the Iraq War, who opposed the setting up of an inquiry into it. I think they may already have achieved that, but no mind, because there will be plenty of us, including Jeremy Corbyn, who will have plenty to say and plenty of platforms from which to say it about what's going to happen. But we didn't need a crystal ball, Sarah, because we could have just watched the TV. Jack Straw and Alistair Campbell have not been off the television today. They've been on every single television station, some of them many times. Now, what does that tell you about this coup? That its principal spokespeople are two people that are suspected of war crimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this comes back to the point of their terror of the consequences of Chilcot and the exposure of Tony Blair to war crimes and the whole process that could ensue. Yes, and I think this should be resisted at all costs. And I urged Jeremy Corbyn, can't get through on his phone, the mailbox is stuffed, to say, stay strong.
Don't worry about that, Sarah.
Be courageous. And there's just one other point I want to make, and that was about the referendum. I, for one, voted for Brexit because two things. One, I didn't buy into this sentimental picture of lovely, peaceful Europe. Peaceful Europe, my foot. Illegal bombing of
they've been at war constantly with all the countries round about them. Sarah, I have to go to a break. It's been marvellous talking to you, and I hope to do so again. I'll go back to Fraser in Nottingham after this. 0844 499 1000. That's 0844 499 1000. That's the number to call to join the great debate this evening. Nigel Nelson never turns a blind eye to what's going on at Westminster. He's the political editor of the Sunday People and joins us now. Nigel, you're certainly not going out of business anytime soon.
Probably not for the next 2 years.
The political news is filling all the newspapers. Tell us your view of what happened today on the Labour and the Tory fronts, if you would.
Okay, well, if you put them both together, the simple answer is that Parliament's going through some kind of collective nervous breakdown. So actually understanding what is happening where and who's doing what has been incredibly difficult all day. On the Labour side, all we know so far is that there's been a vote of no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn. 172 MPs want him to go, 40 want him to stay. Jeremy Corbyn says he's going to stay. On the Tory side, we're gradually seeing people coming out, declaring themselves to succeed David Cameron as Prime Minister.
How is that going on the latter point? Now, there's this new fashion of running mates. So Crab says that his running mate is Javid.
That's right.
These duets are forming up. But are the MPs declaring yet? And if so, who's in the lead?
Well, I mean, at the moment, I think that Theresa May seems to be nudging it as far as anyone can gather. And, of course, she hasn't actually said that she's going to do it yet. So, I mean, the kind of expectation is that it's going to be between Boris and Theresa. However, these things, as you well know, George, have a habit of actually going in a completely different direction.
Especially in the Tory party, yeah. Apparently, the favourite has never won. Is that right, Nigel? Someone told me earlier that the favourite has never actually won the Tory leadership.
I don't know. I'd have to go delving back into my books on Tory history to be able to find that out. But what I do think happens is that you assume certain things like it'll be a runoff between Boris Johnson and Theresa May, and something unexpected happens. So, for instance, I would keep a close eye on Andrea Leadsom. She's obviously got till Thursday to declare, but she had an excellent Brexit campaign. I would have thought that the next Prime Minister ought to be from the Brexit camp.
Yes.
That would make an awful lot of sense if they've got to negotiate us getting out of Europe.
Yes.
Andrea Leadsom has got a lot of support amongst MPs. This is long before the referendum came along. There were a lot of Tory MPs who had mentioned that she was someone to watch for the future. Question now is whether she declares.
Yeah. And, of course, she's got to get on the shortlist, and then she's got to get out in the country. If they put her on, that would presuppose keeping Boris off, wouldn't it?
It would. And I think that
there'd be a lot of trouble over that, Nige.
Well, there would, but an awful lot is going on. There is certainly beginning to be a Stop Boris movement, and so if you follow the logic that we need a Brexit Prime Minister, once you've got to the stage of thinking who can stop Boris, you'll have Theresa on one side, but on the other, on the Brexit side, then Andrea Leadsom would be the ideal person.
Now, on Theresa May, she's always struck me, I sat in Parliament with her for quite some years, as worthy but dull, competent but not much stardust about her. As someone unkindly on here said the other night, a bit of a Dalek.
Yeah, well, I think that's very unkind. I mean, I've been watching her for the last 6 years since she's been Home Secretary, addressing Tory party conferences, and I think that she absolutely captivates an audience when she's speaking. However, the one thing that lets her down a bit is that she is also painfully shy. She's great if she can get onto a stage and she has the audience in the palm of her hand. On a one-to-one basis, she tends to be a bit uncomfortable, rather like Gordon Brown was as Prime Minister. And I think
good point, yeah.
Well, the one thing you actually need from a Prime Minister is they do have to not necessarily get on with people, but people are happy to be in their company and have one-to-ones.
Yeah.
They're not running a department. What they're doing is going out there representing Britain's interests with other foreign leaders, and really you want those leaders to want you as part of the club.
Now, why is Liam Fox, another Brexiteer, why is he limbering up? I mean, he's been out of the cabinet for some years. He left under a bit of a cloud. And if Boris is also a Brexiteer, why would Liam Fox run against him?
Oh, I think ambition. And the one thing that you well know about politics, George, is that ambition is the one thing that fuels them all.
Yeah.
So if he fancies his chances, I can see him actually going forward. But the Tory process of actually whittling people down is an awful lot simpler in a sense than the Labour process. So all you actually need is 2 nominations to get onto the ballot paper. From there, those people we whittle down till you're left with 2 candidates. So it is a much simpler process. In a sense, I think it's easier to throw your hat in the ring because you don't need a big pile of MPs behind you to actually launch the challenge. So someone like Liam Fox might as well have a go.
Now, if they kept Boris off the ballot paper, there would be a lot of trouble, as I say. He would be unlikely to take that lying down. That could begin to accelerate something that might be going on anyway, which is some kind of reconfiguration of British politics. Because Boris, having given up the London mayoralty, with the Tory leadership his only other goal in life, he wouldn't take it lying down to be, as he would put it, manoeuvred off the ballot paper.
No, he wouldn't. But there is I think that there is a slight problem on the fact that it is a democratic election, at least at this stage where it's just MPs who are deciding who should be on the ballot paper. If MPs say, look, we haven't got confidence in Boris, I'm not sure he's got much choice but to accept that. Now, obviously, we're going through a period where we could see the two major parties both splitting.
Yeah.
But you'd end up in a situation where we are delivering a new negotiation which will be incredibly delicate, really important, to start a lot of infighting on the government side while that is going on would be incredibly irresponsible. And it may be that somebody like Boris would take a view that, okay, if he didn't make it this time, there is the next time. Clearly, it will depend on whether we have a general election this year. My betting is we probably will, because I think the new Prime Minister will want their own mandate. But Boris can be around for a few more years yet, and he may have another go. But I do think that once this initial process is dealt with, whoever is chosen to be the next Tory leader, the others will probably accept that for the sake of both party unity and the interests of the country.
Or he could be pushed in the direction of Farage, and you could get a crystallisation of, as it were, the real, authentic leavers, the real Brexiteers coalescing, the not particularly serious about Brexit Tories lining up with the Liberals and the right wing of the Labour Party, which has just had a hiding in the Labour leadership election. You see where I'm going?
I do see where you're going, and I think that at this moment it's impossible to predict which way things are going to go and how it would happen. Yes, what MPs have been talking about today is the various possible alliances that could be set up for what would effectively become new parties. That is the conversation I've been having with Labour MPs today, having similar conversations with Tory MPs about what might happen if they get the wrong result. I mean, if the Brexiteers, for instance, were pushed out completely in this leadership election, what they might do. I think it's too early for that. And going back to what I originally said, it does feel very much like people having a nervous breakdown at the moment. And as a result, there is an awful lot of panic going on. Very little rational thought is taking place. Give it a few days, and I think that will begin to calm down as people start to work out what is the best way forward. And that includes the individuals, it includes the parties, and obviously the best way forward for the country.
Well, I know you'll keep calm and carry on. Nigel Nelson, thanks very much for joining us, political editor at the Sunday People. Now, the aforementioned Farage went to the European Parliament today. The head of it, or was it Mr. Juncker, asked him why he was there. The proper answer would have been, because I'm an elected member of this Parliament, just like you. He's been widely slated for what he said in the European Parliament, but I didn't think he said a word that was untrue. Let's listen to some of it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Schultz. Isn't it funny? You know, when I came here 17 years ago, and I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union, you all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you? And the reason you're so upset, the reason you're so angry, has been perfectly clear from all the angry exchanges this morning. You, as a political project, are in denial. You're in denial that your currency is failing. You're in denial. Well, just look at the Mediterranean. No. As a policy to impose poverty on Greece and the rest of the Mediterranean, you've done very well. And you're in denial over Mrs. Merkel's call last year for as many people as possible to cross the Mediterranean into the European Union has led to massive divisions between countries and within countries.
Well, all of that had the benefit of being factual, even if his interpretation of Mrs. Merkel's policy is not one that I share. But who could deny what he said next about his fellow members of the European Parliament?
But what I would like to see is a grown-up and sensible attitude to how we negotiate a different relationship. Now I know that virtually none of you have ever done a proper job in your lives, or worked in business, or worked in trade, or indeed ever created a job. But listen, just listen.
Well, how could you not listen? No, it was being barracked, and obviously when you're being barracked in a parliament, there's a bit of a repartee develops, and you give some and you take some. As I said, I completely disagree with Nigel Farage about the issue of refugees. Completely. 100% disagree with him on that. But on the subject of members of parliament never having done a proper job, he's absolutely correct. I used to say in Parliament that I used to make Michelin tyres. Other tyres are available. I used to make Michelin tyres, whilst the majority of you couldn't even change one. That's the facts of the matter. We have a political class that has no foot in the real world. That's the truth of it. Well, write this number down, 0844 499 1000, because that's the number you'll need to dial to join me in the next 2 hours discussing the great issues at home and abroad, in the British Parliament, in the American elections, in the European Parliament, after the referendum. It's all coming up after the news.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
On Talk Radio, we'll get you talking.
Listener comrades of the world, unite! He's a weapon of mass discussion, and he's back on your radio.
Get ready for a revolutionary rumble on your radio with the original George of the political jungle.
Galloway, celebrate the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway. Come have a go if you think you're hard enough. Get it? On the radio station that gives power to the people.
Talk Radio, we'll get you talking.
Indeed we will. I'm George Galloway. This is the mother of all talk shows, though only temporarily on a Tuesday. My normal slot henceforth will be every Friday between 7 and 10. But I'm in tonight and tomorrow night, and how lucky am I, because some of the biggest stories that we have ever seen are rolling out in front of us. We've talked about Labour in the first hour. We're going to talk about the Tories and the EU and a little bit of Labour in the second and third. So, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. 0844 499 1000.
Big Georgie Galloway's back on the radio. Galloway, celebrate the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway
on Talk Radio.
Well, I want to take a look now at the Conservative leadership election. It's a day or two before we'll know the final runners and riders, but already heaving into view are the principal characters. So who better to talk to than a very wise and gallant gentleman? I have to say that because he's a former army officer as well as a right honourable member of the House of Commons. He's Andrew Mitchell, former Cabinet Minister. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening, George.
Andrew, let me start by asking about the shoe which hasn't dropped. In my opinion, the Right Honourable David Davis was the only leader the Tories should have picked last time. Why isn't he in the race this time? He's a man with a broad national reach. He's a steady hand. He's a Brexiteer. And he's a man of unimpeachable integrity. Wouldn't he have been a better runner in this race?
Well, all those things are true, George, and his contribution to British politics and to the House of Commons is immense. But I think he felt, he'd done it before and he didn't win it then. And I think he thinks, that that time has gone. But there's no doubt at all that he'll continue to make a huge contribution in the House of Commons on the issues which he has made his own, human rights issues and issues to do with individual liberty. David is very much the person who has championed that agenda in the House of Commons, and one respect on all sides for doing so.
So a return maybe to the front bench under a new leader?
Well, who knows? The cards will all be thrown up in the air, and we will see how they land.
Well, the crab is sidling up to the starting line, and the fox looks like he's going hunting. But the big bear is surely way out in front. Boris Johnson, who's styled himself on Winston Churchill, may be about to end his wilderness years. What do you think?
Well, I think he's a very attractive and compelling candidate. The others you mentioned, too, are very good candidates with a huge amount to offer their party and their country. My own feeling is that it's very difficult indeed to see, with the best will in the world, how a non-Brexiteer can lead the party and the country now. You can look down the track at the negotiations and the difficulties ahead. It's pretty clear to me that it will be much easier for a Brexiteer to take control of the Conservative Party and be Prime Minister than for someone who was a Remain candidate. So, I think it's likely that the candidate who wins at the end of the day will be someone who campaigned and voted for Brexit. But in the Conservative Party, the favourite never wins. I can't think of any occasion, certainly in my political lifetime, where the favourite has won a leadership election. So it's an interesting and complex picture.
Indeed, that's true. And of course, were a Remainer to succeed and then go into those negotiations, they'd be open to the charge from UKIP and others that they were effectively seeking to sabotage the Leave victory, wouldn't they?
Precisely. And of course, whatever happens, people will say, if you had a believer, you would have got a better deal. And because this person was a Remainer, they have settled for second best. And that's the danger. And it's also why I feel that in the end, the logic of the situation leads pretty inexorably towards someone who supported Brexit.
Now, I suppose the most Remainiac of the names that are in the frame, though he's not yet declared, would be Jeremy Hunt, to continue my hunting metaphor. Does he have any chance of capitalising on the fact that, at least at the shortlisting stage, it's the MPs in control, and most Tory MPs were for Remain?
Well, it was split pretty much 50-50, and he is an enormously attractive candidate. He's experienced, he's held down an extremely difficult job at a difficult time, and as I say, he's a very attractive character. But as far as I can see, the fact that he was a staunch candidate for Remain...
And he's threatening or promising, depending on your point of view, a second referendum.
Well, I don't think it's possible to have a second referendum on the same issue. You could, I suppose, see political circumstances where you could have a second referendum on a different issue, on a settlement, yes or no. But what we certainly can't do is be treated like the Irish and be asked to go round the track again until we get it right. The public have voted. It's been a huge campaign. Very large numbers of people have made their decision. The issues have been thrashed out very thoroughly indeed, and the country's decided, and that's that. We're leaving, and now it only remains to work out the terms of our new relationship with the European Union. That we are going is not in question.
Well, again, continuing my hunting metaphor, what about Liam Fox? He's a staunch Leaver, and he is throwing his hat into the ring. Is he any threat to Boris Johnson, do you think?
Well, he could be, and he's a very experienced politician, former member of the cabinet, held down the defence brief, a long lineage in the Conservative Party, and he's a highly credible candidate. Though whether, alongside the other Brexiteers, he will get cut through remains to be seen.
So that leaves us with Boris out in front, and I'm sure that you're right about that. He has a certain stardust that I think the others don't have. But you're one of my poshest friends, but Boris is even more posh than you. To what extent does the privileged background of Eton and the Bullingdon Club and this kind of raffish, almost fictional look and sound about him. To what extent would that be a disadvantage in a general election, do you think?
Well, I don't think it would be. I think that it's you have to weigh the whole man in the balance and look at him, in the round. And he is not a smooth professional politician in the sense that many of our recent leaders have been. And I think that makes him more attractive. We live in a world where Donald Trump has come to very considerable prominence. And I think people are tired of that old sort of politician. They want something that is more genuine, more earthy, if you like. And I think Boris fulfills that criteria, and he's an exciting politician. If you walk down the street with him, you can see the way in which people react to him. He's very genuine, in my opinion, and that will give him both great appeal in the Conservative Party election, but also as and when a general election comes. I think he will be an exciting and interesting and compelling candidate.
Andrew Mitchell, your wisdom is much appreciated. Thanks very much for joining us on Talk Radio.
Thank you, George.
Well, what did you think of that? 0844 499 1000. That's the number to call me. 0844 499 1000. And we'll call you back. So it doesn't seem onerous. And if we're going to make this the University of the Airwaves, we need to hear everybody's voice with every point of view. Let's go to Nottingham and talk with Fraser. Had to interrupt him earlier. Forgive me, Fraser, but that's a much better line. Tell me what you were saying. You got up to Batley and Spen, I think.
Yes, I did. Yeah, sorry about before. Well, because of the tragic events and the by-election, and there's been talk that possibly David Miliband may be parachuted in, but I wondered, would that be possible at all? I hope not.
Well, if he is, he'll be fighting me.
Well, I hope not, but I really wanted to say what I was going on to say. Sarah said a lot of what I was going to say about Chilcot, obviously a week tomorrow, and I know you'll have a lot to say about that, and I hope you give them a real roasting. I think that if Jeremy doesn't prevail, I think it's going to really put young people off politics
totally, yeah,
permanently. And
it's going to put them off the Labour Party, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I am a member of the Labour Party, and I have been since I was quite a bit younger. And I've got a young cousin who's in Young Labour, and the sort of unspoken problem really is that this nastiness, this viciousness on the right of the party, which goes, which goes all the way through. And there's this really thuggish element which comes from people like, Blenkinsop and Duggar and all that crowd. I know it's too simplistic to say Blairite, but you know what I mean. They're all sort of one big mass of...
a seething mass of reaction.
This is it. And I remember watching you once, and you were getting shouted at by Emma Reynolds and
yes,
and there's just all this crowd.
I'll tell you what I never saw before, though, Fraser. I never saw the leader of the Labour Party heckled by his own MPs whilst addressing the Prime Minister. That I never saw before.
But what angered me was that the camera sort of didn't pan on so we could see who was doing it. You could hear it, but you couldn't see which MPs in particular. But I also wanted to mention that I really hope Jeremy does succeed again, and I'll be out doing everything I can to support him. And if by any chance he's listening, I want to say just, be strong, hang in there, and all the people around him. But eventually, I really think the person that I would like to see succeeding when the time comes is Clive Lewis.
Yes, he's an excellent fellow, yes.
For me, seems exceptional. He's kind, he's compassionate, and he just seems like a really, really good man. And
he's even got a military background.
Yeah, so they can't use that again, although I think they probably will use that against him anyway. Because
he's a very handsome fellow. I know I've never met him, but from what I've seen of him, I rate him quite highly, actually.
He's got real charisma, and when he was sort of supporting Jeremy and everything, he's been rock solid. He's not sort of gone back on what he said. And I also want to. So there's so much I want to say, George, because I'm so passionate.
All right, go ahead.
I feel like when we talk about the Labour Party, there's no you see some of the people that are within it. I don't mean at a local level, but at a national level, and they're so disconnected from their CLPs.
Totally.
And they're not. I mean, not how many of them actually bothered to come to their CLPs and said, how would you like us to vote in this?
No, they wouldn't dream of it. Fraser, the Wirral constituency, the constituency of Angela Eagle, overwhelmingly backed Jeremy Corbyn just 2 nights ago.
I'm really disappointed, George, because I voted for Angela Eagle. I only voted for Jeremy, and then I voted Tom Watson and Angela Eagle, and I regret both of those, Tom and Angela, because particularly Tom, going back to this sort of thuggish element, there is that sort of underlying feeling that they just can't be trusted. And the same with all of these people. I mean, you see it on social media. I'd say to people, although probably if they're listening here, they've got it already, but to get Facebook and Twitter, because you miss out on so much. You don't see the MP's true colours. If you just see your MP, if you're an older person and you just sort of see your MP around and you go, isn't he a nice guy? Isn't he, isn't she lovely? But you see what they're really about on social media. And, when I see the way that some of them treat Diane Abbott, that really, really angers me. The racism, the abuse that she received, and not one comes out and sticks up for it.
No.
Anything about Jess Phillips, they're all falling over themselves to, congratulate her on her words of...
About her, least said, the better, I think, from me. Fraser, it's been fantastic talking to you. Don't be a stranger. Come back again soon. We'll go to Joe in Bernard Castle after this.
Listener comrades of the world, unite! The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
On Talk Radio. We'll get you talking.
0844 499 1000. That's 0844 499 1000. That's the number to dial to join the great debate. Let me run through some of the SMS and tweets. Neil in the Wirral says, George, what's going on in Parliament at the moment is like the breakup of the Beatles during the fall of the Roman Empire. Very cleverly put. David says, George, you have articulated in part my reservations about Tom Watson and his upcoming role in this treacherous coup. Kira says, I know you're not a fan of the Tories, I'm not either, but I found Ruth Davidson, MSP, a good speaker. What do you think? Yes, indeed, she is a good speaker, and she's the leader of the opposition now in Scotland. Who would have thunk it? And Osman says Blair and Campbell should be more worried about their own business, like the possibility of their being charged with war crimes. Judge a man by his enemies. Thanks, Osman. Colin says, the biased BBC only stated that the EU Parliament booed Farage. They did not say or show the standing applause some gave him there. And Richard, Red Star, says the Labour Party are after the Liberal or Conservative vote, not the disaffected ex-Labour voter and working-class voter, etc. Simon Burtonshaw, no, I've not got his. So let me go back to the phone lines and hear from Joe in Barnard Castle. Where's that? Sounds wonderfully exotic, Joe.
No, it's in County Durham, George.
Fantastic, fantastic. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, there's 171 MPs who should hold their heads in shame tonight. They really should have, before they made a decision, should have gone back to their electorate and asked their opinion. And I know for a fact, bar one or two, that they didn't. And I just feel appalled why they're ripping at this time when we have the perfect opportunity to take down a right-wing Conservative government when they're tearing themselves apart. It's appalling the way they've behaved.
Amen. I agree with every word of that, Joe, and my best regards to County Durham and to the teaching assistants that have been so badly treated there, and I'm fully supporting their campaign. Thanks for the call. Richard is in Leeds. Let's hear from him. Richard, go ahead.
Hi, George. How are you?
I'm good, by the grace of God, and the better for hearing from you. Go ahead.
Good. A couple of things. I think what you said earlier about the young voters and why they voted to remain is a tad dismissive, if I'm honest. I think
go ahead.
Still, I've had a lot of different views, but that isn't really what I wanted to follow up about. What my view of it is that I know the EU is not perfect at all, but I didn't believe that our economy or the economies around the world was strong enough to take such a shock to the system.
Why is it a shock, by the way, Richard?
Well, it's the uncertainty, isn't it, of not knowing what's coming next. What kind of deals? I mean, if we do force a referendum in another country because of what we've done.
Well, we wouldn't be forcing it, Richard, would we?
Sorry, so forcing is maybe not the right word. If we give them encouragement by what we've done, and that's a member that is part of the Eurozone and they leave, do you not think that could lead to the collapse of
But Rich, they would only leave if they wanted to leave. And unless you're saying people should be held against their will in a Eurozone that has, frankly, failed the vast majority of its members. What are you saying? They should be held in it against their will?
No, what I'm saying is, if the Eurozone collapses, what comes next?
Well,
poverty for millions and millions of people.
But again, I ask you why. Again, I ask you why, Richard, because people say these things, but they either don't understand. I'm not saying that's the case in your particular call, but they either don't understand or they fail to articulate why. Why is it disastrous for the Portuguese people to choose to go back to using their own currency, which they control? Why is that a disaster?
I'm not saying that ultimately it would be a disaster. I just don't see that the global financial market could handle that right now.
Well, Richard, who cares about the global financial markets? Are you sitting there with a big pile of currency that you're deciding what you're going to turn it into tonight? I doubt that. I doubt that.
No, I'm not. No.
Well, exactly. So what does it matter? What does it matter? As it happens, Rich, the pound is going up against the euro. But if it went down against the euro, as it did in the first couple of days, well, that would make it much easier for British manufacturers and exporters to sell their goods. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and I'm not denying any of that, but I saw the hardships that were felt when the American financial institutions collapsed in 2008.
Oh, well, we all saw that, yeah.
Yeah,
We're still feeling it.
And that was just, exactly, we are. And that was just a few financial institutions. Now, if that was the effect from a few financial institutions collapsing, the effect from a whole currency collapsing...
Well, it doesn't collapse. But, Richard, it doesn't collapse or need to collapse. When you had a small group of economies that were roughly on the same ballpark, having a common market, having a single currency even, that could work. But when you have economies as divergent as the German economy and the Slovakian economy or the Bulgarian economy, that cannot work and isn't working. So why persist in something that isn't working?
I understand your point. I get where you're coming from. I can't say that I agree. I think that we should have waited a few years to let the dust settle from the financial crisis that we, as you've said, we're still feeling the effects of. But like I said, I do totally understand your point. I just think we're being a bit premature, and
I think
maybe we should have waited.
I urge boldness upon you, Richard. Persevering in and reinforcing failure is seldom a good idea. But thanks for your call. It was a good one. Gemma says, all I can say at the moment is every word you say about Corbyn resonates with me. And somebody says, slightly edgy, Jesus Christ had one Judas, Jeremy Corbyn has 172. Paddy McIntyre says, Jeremy Corbyn holding steady against the revolt. Would you join his cabinet? Well, of course, you have to be a member of Parliament to be in the cabinet. And my return to the House of Commons, whilst widely anticipated and no doubt widely welcomed, is not yet imminent. Andrew Parker says, it looks like Sky News and the BBC are showing back-to-back episodes of The Thick of It, except it's more dramatic. Indeed, The Thick of It couldn't compete with what's happening here. And Adam says, outrageously unprofessional behaviour from Labour MPs, who clearly do not share Jeremy Corbyn's desire for a new politics. Thanks, Adam. Let's take a call from Amina in Birmingham.
Hi, George.
Hi, Amina. Go ahead.
Basically, I'm going a bit off topic, but I wanted to talk about Brexit and the racial tensions. Basically, as you know, tensions against ethnic minorities have escalated since Brexit, and it's usually towards the South Asian, East African Muslim community. So does this prove that the British people did not know what they were voting for?
It doesn't prove anything of the kind, even in as much as it's true. The idea that we didn't have any racists before last Thursday and that they weren't shouting at people like you, racist insults and so on, is, as you very well know, better than anybody else, completely
true,
untrue. All these racists that are here today were here last week, and they're idiotic,
but
disgusting
do you feel like it has
behavior.
given them like some sort of pass to be more openly racist?
No, I don't. And insofar as there's been a spike in reporting of incidents, I believe that that will settle down. Look, there is racism in Britain. There is Islamophobia in Britain. But it is nothing as compared to the racism and Islamophobia in the European Union, on the European mainland. I always say to people, if you think England is racist, you've never lived in France or the Netherlands. So racism has to be fought everywhere by everybody, but it has nothing to do with the vote on leaving the European Union. I mean, I've got to go for
Thank you,
a
George.
break. Thank you very much for the call. 0844 499 1000. That's the number to call. You can also watch on Periscope right at this moment, live. I hope I wasn't doing anything inappropriate because I had forgotten the Periscope was on. And you can get the link on my Twitter. That's at George Galloway. Now, we're talking about the Labour leadership. We're talking about the Tory leadership. And we're talking about the European Union. Spoke to Andrew Mitchell, a former cabinet minister, earlier about the Tory runners and riders. Let's talk to another former Conservative government cabinet minister in a minute or two. John Redwood, who wasn't just in the cabinet, but was one of the bastards that John Major referred to in his infamous sotto voce, or so he thought, in a television studio, and a former leadership contender at that. He doesn't want to talk about the Tory leadership, understandably enough. He's still making up his mind as to who he is backing, or who knows, maybe whether or not he's going to have another go himself, but he doesn't want to talk about that. But I do want to talk to him about how serious the Conservative Brexiteers really are about Brexiting, because as I spoke to Nigel Farage about last night, there is now a creeping doubt that some at least of these Conservative Brexiteers really want to Brexit. You'll recall that it seemed like, prior to the victory, that these people had a plan, that Boris Johnson and these other Tory leaders of the Brexit campaign, it seemed like they had a plan. But it turns out that if they did, it hasn't quite worked out yet. Let's go to another call while we're waiting for John Redwood. Go to Redcar for Lockie. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, hello, George. Well, good evening.
Good evening.
I'd just like to speak basically about the Redcar MP, Anna Turnley. Now, what I want to talk about is the issue that she raised a tiny few months ago about the steel industry.
Yeah.
The MP fought vigorously to defend Redcar steel industry.
Mm-hmm.
But then what she turned around and she said the Conservative government at this present period of time, before we have any vote on the referendum, cannot serve the steel industry because of EU regulations.
Yeah.
So I thought, fair do, excellent. But when it came to the Brexit vote, she was in favour of voting in, to stay in. Well, doesn't that make her a hypocrite?
Well, it doesn't necessarily make her a hypocrite, but it makes her a turkey voting for an early Christmas. Because if you say to your electorate that I'm fighting like hell to save the steel industry, but the European Union won't allow me to save it, but I'm asking you to stay in the European Union anyway, well, that's cruising for an electoral bruising. And I think that the red car seat has changed hands in the past, and I've no doubt at all that UKIP, for example, will be gunning for her in the election on exactly that basis, that she let down the people of Redcar and the people of the steelworks by supporting a system that she openly admitted was against the interests of the steelworker. But it doesn't make her a hypocrite. You could argue it makes her an honest woman, because I suppose she could have, for opportunistic reasons, tried to fudge that issue. And to her credit, I suppose, she didn't. How did she vote today? Did she vote to throw out Jeremy Corbyn?
Yes, she voted to throw out Jeremy. Now I tweeted the woman, and I said, how can you knock the fundamental foundations of the Labour Party when it was built on socialism? Mm-hmm. And I said the problem with you, I said, you're nothing but a Blairite. And I said, I never voted for a Conservative. And I said, before you took office, you projected yourself as socialist values, which is clearly a neoconservative.
Well,
so
again,
she's lied to all the people in Redcar to what she represents.
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say she's a neoconservative. I don't know her. Let me make that clear. So I don't even know what she looks like. So I'm not making a personal observation here.
Right,
but what she certainly is a supporter of the neoliberal economic orthodoxy of the European Union. And
I understand that.
That is a very out of fashion idea, and it's certainly out of fashion in areas like Redcar or Llanelli in Wales or in the other post-industrial wastelands that have been laid waste by neoliberal economic ideas from the Thatcher era until now.
Right. I'm trying to think. What I don't understand. I've just got my school of thought right here. God, I've lost the plot of it actually.
Don't worry, my friend. Don't worry. Take your time.
Yeah, hang on. What I don't understand with the woman is she's one of the political elite of the Labour Party who are vigorously attacking the leader of the Labour Party.
Yeah.
Now, what I don't understand is Jeremy was democratically elected, but I think over 200,000 votes.
250,000. 9 months ago.
Democratic votes he got to make him the leader.
Yeah.
Now, what gives the right of 200 MPs to vigorously...
Not even 200. 172.
Well,
172 people want to overthrow the guy that was elected by 250,000 people just 9 months ago. I mean, contemplate that for Lockie.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
Well, I don't think it's forgivable, and I don't believe that she should be forgiven for it. I don't believe that any of these people, once Jeremy has won what I believe will be a big victory and re-elected as leader, I don't know how these people can look him in the face or look their party in the face.
Yeah. The saddest issue is, now don't take this the wrong way, the way members of Parliament in the Labour Party are acting, they could all end up going the same way as Joe Cox, because I think they are really, I'd have to emphasise in profanity, sort of peeing people off.
Yeah.
I know it's an extremist thing that happened to Joe Cox, but I wonder why we have situations like that.
Oh, no, I don't accept that. No, I'm going to stop you there. If our country goes down the road of physical violence against people with whom we politically disagree, we won't have a country at all.
Oh, no, I understand that.
We won't have a society.
Yeah,
we have to draw a very firm line, and it hasn't been drawn. When I was attacked in the street and hospitalized, nobody said a word about it. None of the powerful people said a word about it. And it took Peter Oborne, the best of the right-wing journalists, to make the point. If this can happen to Galloway, it can happen to anybody. And if you don't stand up against it when it happens to somebody you don't like and you don't disagree with, then where are you going to be? Where does that end up? Well, it ended up in the foul, vile murder of a young woman, a mother of 2 small children, doing her own job the way she thought fit. Thanks for the call. Otherwise, sorry to get a bit het up there at the end. I just can't allow anybody to, in any way, give any kind of understanding to a savage assault on a defenceless young woman and the putting to death of that young woman. 0844 499 1000. That is the number.
He's a weapon of mass discussion, and he's back on your radio. The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway
on Talk Radio. We'll get you talking.
Well, judging by my Twitter at least, this show has really taken light this evening. We will be talking to John Redwood, former Tory cabinet minister and leadership contender and prominent Eurosceptic, but in the next hour. Because we've had some difficulty contacting him, but that's now booked. 0844 499 1000 is the number to call. You can email me, you can text me. You can email me at talkradio.co.uk. You can text talk followed by your message to 87222, or you can tweet at talkradio or at George Galloway, or you can include us both. But first I want to talk to someone about an issue you heard me raise earlier, and if you were here last night, you heard me raise with Nigel Farage. Namely, were the Tory leaders of the Leave campaign actually serious about leaving? Because I'm beginning to have my doubts. My next guest is bound to have a point of view on that and may be able to help set my anxieties at rest. He's Richard Tice, and he's co-founder of Leave.eu. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good evening, George.
Now, good evening to you. I made the point to Nigel Farage last night. I make it now to you. All the certainty with which the official Leave campaign prosecuted the last few days especially of the referendum campaign seems to have dissipated, and we seem to have been left in a kind of no man's land. Are we really going to leave the EU or not?
Well, we definitely will leave the European Union, that is for sure, George, but you're absolutely right. I mean, it is extraordinary. Not only did the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have no plan B, indeed they actually refused to allow a plan B to be thought of and prepared for. But also, it's increasingly clear, and we had heard suggestions, that actually Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, they really didn't expect to win. There were genuine questions about whether or not actually they really wanted to win. So they didn't have a plan A. And this really does, well, it's just extraordinary and frankly shocking as to how senior politicians that we believe are competent should think as to how they should run the country. But so I think that's what we're seeing. I think they all now realise that it's probably deeply embarrassing, and that hopefully they will start to play catch up. And we, in terms of Leave.eu, we work closely with Nigel. We work closely with an organisation called Labour Leave. We will be, frankly, holding them to account to push forward very, very quickly, because the whole country wants this to start to move forward.
Well, I was very much myself associated with Labour Leave, and I'm sure that they, together with you, are going to press home this point. But just before we lose it, let's just ponder how serious a matter it is that two leaders, Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, Boris Johnson, who kept us waiting until the moment he stepped on the doorstep to announce his intentions as to whether or not he was for or anti leaving the EU, who had written 2 columns for the next day's Daily Telegraph arguing no doubt in his inimitable style, persuasively either way. So I'd go further. I'd say not only did Boris Johnson expect to win, I'm really doubtful as to whether he wanted to win, which means that he's an actor of monumental brilliance, because he then went on to perform daily and nightly to the public for something that I suspect he didn't actually really want to happen.
Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it? And in a sense, it's all history. The important thing now is that people come together very quickly, and this Tory leadership situation needs to be resolved much more quickly and urgently than, frankly, the Tory party seems to be, concluding, so that a negotiating team can be assembled, and that needs to consist of specialists from all walks of life, including senior business figures. It definitely mustn't include civil servants for obvious reasons. And then they need to report to a political committee, which needs to be cross-party, and then absolutely must include Nigel Farage, so that there can be some integrity to this whole process.
They'd be fools if they didn't include Farage, because
he knows, frankly, more about where all the issues are and where all the tricks are within the European Union. He knows more than any other UK politician, I suspect.
I'm sure that's true, but that's not the only reason for including him. If you don't include him, he'll stand outside and break your windows, and he will cry foul, and he will be listened to by the public when he cries foul. Because after all, why would they be keeping him out if it wasn't to do some skullduggery?
Exactly, and he would cry foul with very considerable justification. So, we're obviously determined to ensure that doesn't take place. But I think it's important, despite all of this, it is important, George, to keep the whole thing in context. In terms
of... we defeated the big power. We defeated big politics, the big banks.
Defeated the establishment. But we must keep it in context. It's 5% of our businesses. It's about 12% of our economy. We're the fifth largest economy in the world. We're incredibly successful. And, your listeners and voters, they should not be worried. They should, continue to go about, the normal lives, working hard, playing hard, enjoying hopefully some summer sunshine, and
being decent to their neighbours wherever they came from.
Absolutely right. That is critical. Absolutely critical. There's obviously been some disgraceful incidents, and hopefully, the police will deal with that, and that will be sort of knocked on.
And the public, the public intervened on that one in the. I think it was in a bus today.
Yes.
And in fact, the people who intervened were Brexit voters, and I was particularly pleased with that.
That's obviously appalling, and hopefully will be dealt with immediately and will go away.
And with the full force,
But it is really important that, despite everything that our establishment politicians sort of threatened us with and bullied us with, people shouldn't be afraid. They should. There's no point talking ourselves into a totally unnecessary slowdown or recession. We need to remember all the fine attributes that the UK has. We're hardworking, we're good industrial relations. We've got the best legal system in the world, the safest property market in the world. We're hugely influential. And as long as people remember those fine attributes that makes us such a great country, then it'll all be absolutely fine, and we'll move forward. And, frankly, in 5 years' time, we'll look back and I believe we'll say, what was all the fuss about?
Well, that's my view too, Richard. Thanks very much for elucidating these points, and the best of luck in the negotiations. Now, just one last point, if I may.
Sure.
The timescale of all of this. The EU leaders are, from their point of view, entirely understandably, saying we're not going to start talking about divorce until you file for divorce. And so when are we going to file for divorce? When is this now famous Article 50 going to be triggered?
Well, I think it clearly has to wait until we've got a new leader of the Tory party. I think it's important to say at this point that the last thing we need, excuse me, is for a general election to be suggested or held. We don't need one. When people vote in an election, they actually vote for a political party. They don't vote, as they do in America, for a president. So I think that's very important, and frankly, we don't need the extra uncertainty. But I think, Article 50 should be served as soon as, sensibly possible after we've got a new Tory leader. And then, it's up to a 2-year negotiating period. And, the negotiating team needs to be in place, needs to be ready, and, we move forward. But equally, in the same way that the people didn't want to be threatened by our establishment, we, the United Kingdom, are not going to be told what to do by unelected bureaucrats in Brussels as to when we should or should not serve Article 50. We'll do it when we're ready.
Quite so. Richard Tice of the Leave.eu campaign, thank you very much indeed for helping us with that tonight. 0844 499 1000. That's the number to call, as Rhys in Carmarthenshire, South Wales, has. I spoke to him last night. I enjoyed it very much. He's back on the line now. Rhys.
Hello, George. Thank you for having me back on.
You're welcome, sir.
I just wanted to say about a lot of the Remain side. I'm on Twitter probably as much as the next person, particularly with the followings that you have as well. What I'm hearing at the moment from the Remain side is a lot of "I told you so" and "I told you so." Now, much like you, I chose to leave the EU on one issue only, and that was democracy.
Yeah.
The right to have a say on the policies and the people who govern us.
Yeah.
I think what they're failing to understand is a lot of them are interested in the free movement of people. I've got no problem with that. I've got a problem with the free movement of labour. But that's another issue. But what they're failing to understand is that they didn't get a choice the first time around when they introduced the free movement of people, and when some of the countries started to stop the movement between countries, the Schengen zone or whatever you want to call it, is that they didn't have a say then. So when they change it to something they don't want, they're not going to have a say this time around either. I wish they would now start talking about what type of EU deal they want. If they want the free movement of people and they don't want the free movement of labour, I wish people would start talking about it, tweeting about it.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, you and I are talking about it. I'm in favour of the free movement of people. I'm not in favour of the free movement of labour, because that can only be overwhelmingly a one-way street, where people from the poorest paid countries come to work in the countries that pay more. And that can only drive the wages down of the people that are already working there, wherever they came from and whenever they came here and whatever colour they are. This is not about race, Rhys. The European population, in case anyone hasn't noticed, is overwhelmingly white. The labour that is coming here under free movement is overwhelmingly white labour, so there's no race issue involved.
Yeah, I completely agree. But it's the narrative seems to be stuck on, we've been cheated. Look, it was a democratic choice, it was a binary choice. Let's get on with it.
Yeah.
Now let's get the left together and start fighting for the things that we want.
Exactly, and that's what the Labour Party should be doing. The Labour Party should be now articulating the list of demands that the labour movement has for the terms of exit. The protection of workers' rights, the protection of mothers' rights, the protection of human rights. All of the demands that we need to level should be being levelled now. Instead, the Labour Party has decided to do something quite different with this moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that one of the biggest problems the Labour Party have got is obviously they're infighting, but they're on about putting on a united front. The only way you put on a united front is when the MPs are getting together and they're supporting the leader. If they were all supporting Jeremy, we'd be facing a very different dilemma. Very, very different. And they haven't,
Rhys, they haven't supported him from the day and hour that he was elected. All this smokescreen that it's about the referendum. They were planning to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn at the first available opportunity, and that's what they've tried to do. Thanks very much, son, for your call. Another good one. Let's see. This so nice to know I'm not alone in these thoughts you're talking about tonight, George. Keep going. We love you, says someone on Twitter. CMac59 says, with the Blairites trying to seize Labour, once again, a change of government would not change austerity economic policy in the UK. That's absolutely correct. There's lots more where that came from, but the time is running, and it's time for a break.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
On Talk Radio, we'll get you talking.
Listen up, comrades of the world. Unite! He's a weapon of mass discussion, and he's back on your radio.
Get ready for a revolutionary rumble on your radio with the original George of the political jungle.
Galloway, celebrate. The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway. Come have a go if you think you're hard enough. Get it? On the radio station that gives power to the people.
Talk Radio, we'll get you talking.
It's George Galloway. It's the mother of all talk shows, and the news just keeps on coming. We're not going to run out of things to talk about, and we can't even yet turn to the atrocity that has just taken place at Ataturk Airport in Istanbul. The domestic and the transatlantic political issues have occupied us last night and tonight. Maybe tomorrow we'll take a look at this ISIS, who they are, what they're up to, and who's responsible for them. But it's with joy unrestrained that I tell you, you're about to have the return of the sage, John Le Boutillier.
Come have a go if you think you're hard enough. Get it? The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
On Talk Radio, we'll get you talking.
Now, John Le Boutillier doesn't just have a great name. He doesn't just have a great voice. He isn't just a former Republican congressman in Washington in the United States. He is the sage. There's nothing about U.S. politics that he doesn't know, and for many years on the mother of all talk shows, he helped us understand what was going on across the Atlantic in politics and in society at large. And it's with a great sense of joy that I welcome him back to the mother of all talk shows. John, welcome.
George, you have no idea how I've missed being on with you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I loved being on years ago, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And
well, they went to 24/7 Sport, but now they've set up this news station, sister station to the sports station, called Talk Radio, and all the signs are, especially this evening, it's really taken light again, and the switchboard is jammed, and people are delighted that you're back. So let me start. Let me start with asking you this. It sounds like a silly question, but will the contest in November really be between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, or are there some slips between cup and lip that might still yet occur?
Yes, there could be slips between the lip and the cup. On the Republican side, there's a big move growing inside the Republican Party to dump Trump at the convention, not only because many people feel he'll lose in November, but also because they're offended by his behavior, his statements, and that he is, in effect, toxic and radioactive, and he could cost us, the Republicans, control of the Senate in November. And that is growing. I don't think they have enough votes yet, but we have 3 weeks to go till the convention. And every day this guy says something horrific that drives more Republicans crazy when they think of him being the leader of our party.
Yes, I mean, if your party is going to lose, as it will if he's the candidate, then you might as well lose with somebody else and keep your dignity, because he has the potential, doesn't he, to completely destruct the Republican Party.
Totally. He could have a catastrophic defeat. But I will say, George, to be fair, there is also a chance that he could actually win the election. I don't yet rule it out because, first of all, on average, he's 5 points behind as of today. And we have four months to go. And there is a hidden Trump vote. People who will not tell a pollster that they're going to vote for Trump, but they will vote for him.
Shy Trumpers.
Shy Trumpers. And Hillary is a very damaged candidate with heavy negatives herself, who just can't put this guy away yet. Now, I'm not sure she doesn't put him away fairly soon, because she's running a strong campaign, a lot of money, a lot of commercials. But it might be the year. This might be the 1 year where all that stuff doesn't really matter, that the desire for change is so big here that people may hold their nose and vote for Trump anyway.
Well, that's a phenomenon that we recognize even on this side of the Atlantic. Jeremy Corbyn came from nowhere and won the Labour leadership on, if you like, the left-wing version of Trumpism. The narrative being that the political class have betrayed us, let us down, they're not to be trusted, they're corrupted, and so on. The kind of thing that Sanders made so much progress on over the Democrat campaign. And then, of course, last week, in the European Union referendum, some of the same currents running out of the same trap, out of the same box, helped to deliver a defeat for the establishment in the European Union referendum. So I think you are right. And then when you add into the mix that Hillary Clinton must be the most hated, she might also be widely loved, but she's widely hated by a large number of people for a very complex number of reasons. You couldn't rule it out, could you, that Trump would actually be the president?
It's hard for me to believe, but I don't rule it out. Not today. Now, this thing's in flux. Trump, he effectively was the nominee on May 4th. So that's almost 8 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Since that time, under no pressure, because he wasn't running anymore against any Republicans, he is self-destructing, George. For some reason, he can't get himself together. He keeps falling apart, attacking other Republicans. The convention that we're about to have is shaping up to be an amazing spectacle where most Republicans refuse to go to the convention. They don't want to be a part of Trump. So he could still self-destruct between now and then. I wouldn't rule it out.
Does he not have people around him that tell him, look, shut up now?
He won't listen to him.
No?
Won't listen. Doesn't listen to anybody. Chafes at being told what to do. I'll give you an example. When he landed up at Turnberry on Friday, the day of your Brexit announcement, he gave a press conference. Then Saturday he goes up to the other one, Aberdeen, wherever it is, and he gives this weird series of press conferences on every other hole of the golf course, where he takes the press, and this is Saturday, in golf carts. And at one of them, and they'd stop at the 13th hole and have a press conference, and one of them, they asked him, well, what do your advisors tell you now about this Brexit thing a day later? He says, well, they're of a mixed opinion, but I don't care. I give the advice.
He advises his advisors.
Yeah.
Well, it's remarkable. Now, again, unlikely, but not impossible, amongst Hillary Clinton's many negatives are the fact that there's an FBI investigation into her conduct. And we keep hearing that the FBI is ready to serve an indictment. Could that possibly happen to a Democratic Party presidential candidate, former Secretary of State, wife of a former president, in the run-up to a presidential election? Could it?
Well, let me tell you, I'm glad you asked. First of all, the FBI can recommend an indictment, but they don't do the indicting. They do the investigating in conjunction with the Justice Department and a team of 8 lawyers who guide the FBI, and they say, well, we need more evidence of this. You got to focus on that, blah, blah. What we're hearing is that once Obama endorsed Hillary 3 weeks ago, that was the end of any chance of the Justice Department agreeing to indict her.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a big but. James Comey, the director of the FBI, is determined to get to the bottom of this thing, and he believes Hillary has broken the law. He has an alternative route to bring an indictment against Hillary, and that is to go to a sitting U.S. attorney. And the way that our system works here is the president appoints people to be what's called a U.S. attorney in various districts around the country. And there's one here in New York called the Southern District, which handles the southern half of New York State. And that Comey could go directly to him and get that guy to impanel a grand jury and get an indictment brought against Hillary. That is a possibility. If that were to happen, Hillary's finished. If she's indicted as a candidate for president, legally you could run, but technically, in reality, you'd be finished.
Politically, you'd be finished, yeah.
Politically be finished. And I think that's why Bernie Sanders does not drop out of the race, because he's holding out hope between now and the 28th of July, when she'll be officially nominated. This could happen. And if it did, he's the only other candidate in the race.
And that would be a fascinating fight. Now, somewhat unlikely, he in the polls does better against Trump than Hillary Clinton does.
I think he beats Trump easily, believe it or not, because Bernie Sanders is likable and consistent. He doesn't make up his positions for political purposes. He believes his liberalism. And
socialism. He'd be the first socialist president of the United States.
Correct.
You can understand how that warms my heart, John.
Well, there you go, George. You'll be greeted well at the White House.
So I'm hoping for an indictment. No, I mean, one last point. There have been some, and they were widely ridiculed for it. And insofar as I echoed what they said, I was attacked on it too. Who say that Trump is a monster, but Hillary is a bigger monster, and that the world would be more imperiled by a Hillary Clinton presidency, which was swaggering around the world, projecting American power, than an isolationist American presidency, even led by an idiot like Donald Trump. Is that a completely off-the-scale analysis, or does it have some validity in your view?
Well, because we don't really know if Trump would be an isolationist. I think Trump would be whatever Trump woke up that day and wanted to be. He's inconsistent.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any sense of history. The big thing with him is he has no guardrails. Nothing works on him the way it works on you and me and on Hillary.
Yeah.
We all have political guardrails that we've been brought up to understand. You can do this, you cannot do that.
Yeah.
That doesn't work on Trump. Or any billionaire. Billionaires are like on another planet.
Yeah. Well, you probably know this already, but most people in the world are absolutely terrified of a Donald Trump presidency. I mean, my producer here is headed back tomorrow, in fact, for a couple of weeks. Is from the North Island of New Zealand, and I've been asking him what the real estate market is like there, because, I don't even know if the North Island would be safe. Maybe we'd need to go to the tip of the South Island of New Zealand to be out of the firing line if we had this untrammeled, close to madman in charge of the nuclear box.
I know. I hear it here, too. Here's the ironic thing about this race. If Trump were running against any other Democrat, he'd lose big. Sanders, anybody else, it's Hillary is so weak, it makes Trump competitive.
Yeah.
Ironically, the other way, if Trump were out of the race and any Republican ran, that Republican could beat Hillary.
Yeah. It's
Each party's sort of picking the one candidate that's the weakest against the other.
Well, I've asked you this before, and I love you and I respect your people. Is this the best that the great United States of America can come up with? What's wrong with a political system that throws up the two most hated people in the country against each other for the presidency?
Yeah, I don't know. It's pathetic. It's why most people no longer believe in our two-party system. They don't believe in either party. They feel alienated from the big institutions, the media, education, business. We have a real revolution happening in this country. You have it, I think, in yours too. It was in the Brexit vote.
Yeah.
We have it. We've been having it, actually.
It's a rejection of the political class, isn't it?
Totally. The election of Obama in '08 was this revolution happening, that they said no more Bushes, families that run everything. We'll try something totally new. A black man from Chicago with a Muslim name. We'll put him in there. See if he can change it. And he didn't change it.
He didn't
change it.
He didn't.
Yeah.
And you and I talked all the way through that campaign, and I'm hoping you don't remember how enthusiastic I was for President Obama, because he's been such a terrible disappointment.
You do remember it.
John, it's an absolute delight to hear your voice again and to partake of your wisdom again. I hope it's going to be a regular thing. I'm on every Friday night between 7 and 10 London time, and I do hope that right up to November and beyond we renew your acquaintance with the great British public. John Le Boutillier, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, George. Thank you.
Big Georgie Galloway's back on the radio.
Galloway, celebrate.
The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway on Talk Radio.
Well, I've got a full switchboard, so let me try and rattle through it. Imran is on first from Hull. Go ahead, Imran.
Hi, George. Basically, I'm so annoyed about what's happening with Jeremy Corbyn at the moment. I think the party is so out of touch with young voters, it's beyond belief. And the fact an overwhelming amount of young people, especially old voters, new voters, everybody voted for Corbyn. They joined the party to vote for Corbyn. And one of my own MPs, Carl Turner, has stepped down from the shadow cabinet.
I was astounded by that. He was very lucky to have been given a seat in a shadow cabinet.
Absolutely.
He wouldn't. He would have been the bar steward of former shadow cabinets. He'd have been serving the drinks.
Well, to be honest, Carl Turner, what he did, and knowing how many people from Hull as well, I know we overwhelmingly voted Brexit, but I know a lot of people was very pro-Corbyn in Hull, and the fact that people are stepping down left, right and centre, and they've just got no respect for the voters, the people that voted him in.
He resigned because Jeremy didn't persuade the people in his own constituency to vote for the EU. I mean, how does that even compute?
Absolutely. And I think as well, and I think the way this has been pinned on Jeremy Corbyn, because we've left the EU and almost that he didn't fight enough for the campaign, I just think it's absolutely shocking, regardless of what Jeremy's doing.
Imran, I thought he fought far too hard for the campaign. Far too hard. Thanks for your call, son. Another time, because there's so many people. Guy is in Newcastle. Let's hear from him. Guy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, yeah.
Go ahead. You're on the air, sir.
George, I think you've been over-celebratory about the Leave result.
Okay.
I think that the campaign was fought on fear. You got Brexit. We left.
Guy, this number's breaking up. This line's breaking up. We'll need to come back to you. Let's go to Haley in Dudley. Haley, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air.
Hello. Yeah, I'm just about. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Take your time. What did you want to talk about?
About the lady that phoned up earlier about racism.
Oh, yes.
I think this EU referendum definitely has given racism a voice, to be honest.
It's the same voice it had last week, Haley. There's a tiny part of our society that are racist, fascist people.
But people think that they can talk about it more now.
But I didn't see any lack of talk about it from them before last Thursday. I really think this is a false narrative that those who don't like how the British people voted have got running. The same people that attacked people on buses and on tubes and on trains existed last week, last month, last year. But guess what, Haley? Compared to what happens to minorities, racial minorities, religious minorities, in almost every single European Union country, England has nothing like the scale of the problem that exists elsewhere in the EU on the European continent. Openly fascist parties get millions and millions of votes in the European mainland. Some of them are competing for power on the European mainland. We have nothing like that. The fascist parties in England are a joke. They couldn't fill a couple of football coaches.
Oh, well, I'm just telling you that it's given them a voice. It has. Like, I haven't. I've heard people coming up to me and talking to me about racism, expecting me to agree with them, and I haven't had that for 10 years. Honestly, I haven't.
Well, I've been tracking racist attacks in Britain for decades, and there are thousands of them. The idea that they suddenly emerged because Britain voted to leave the European Union is false. It is false. I'm not saying it didn't happen to you, of course. I believe that it happened to you. But it could have happened, would have happened at any time in the last period, because we have got a layer of people who are racist, Islamophobic, and even fascist. And we have to defeat it. The police and the public have to crack down on it, smash it. But it's nothing like as bad here as it is on the European mainland in the beloved European Union. Haley, I've got to press on. I'm going to Guy in Newcastle. Newcastle
George.
under Lyme. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, George. The result, the Brexit, what I was trying to say is that there's a lot of negative come out of the Leave result. And I think the campaign was fought on fear and negative tactics. There was, if we left, the financial markets would be ruined, and if we stopped, we would be flooded by migrants. Now, I know you've discriminated between migrant looking for work and refugees, but the conversations I hear, they're all the same, and the refugees are as likely to be terrorists.
Well, look, here's a point that you have to grasp. The best possible result for the far right in Britain would have been a narrow defeat for Leave. Can't you see that? Do you think they would have gone away if we'd voted to remain? On the contrary, they'd have become massively more a danger to us.
Well, no, because I think now, I worry now that the situation will occur that that people think they've got a green light to say,
but they've
say what they feel.
Guy, these people don't need a green light. They've been insulting, attacking, even murdering people in Britain for racist and Islamophobic reasons long before the EU referendum.
Well, what about the negative tactics of the posters we've had, George? We had Farage with the line of refugees from Syria.
I absolutely condemn that. His words and his posters are his responsibility. But
George,
it's a binary choice, Guy. You vote in or you vote out.
Yeah, but George, it's those images which I feel have resonated with people.
Well, you're entitled to feel that, but you don't know that. My campaign was with Labour Leave, with the British Communist Party, with the Morning Star newspaper, with the Railway Maritime Transport Trade Union, with the ASLEF Trade Union, with the London organiser of the Fire Brigade Union. So don't try and associate me with the propaganda of other people. Thanks for the call, though. Here's Chris in North Yorkshire. Go ahead, Chris.
George, the point I was going to make was about this protest in Parliament Square that's been going on this evening in favour of the EU. And that kind of links in with the last two callers.
I haven't seen that, Chris. How many people are there?
Well, it was on Channel 4 News, and Jon Snow said, there was a couple of thousand there. But you see, that kind of links in with the last two people who've been on. Because since this country voted out, the majority of people voted to leave the EU. I've studied this for 4 days, and basically it's been a non-stop stream of negativity poured out towards the people who voted leave by the media in order to try and influence people like the last two callers to make them think that all people who voted leave were bad.
Yeah.
I'm sick to death of being accused. I'm like you, I'm a socialist. We follow each other on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I I'm a socialist. My father was a socialist. My grandmother was a socialist. All my family were socialists. And I take exception to being called a racist because I voted Leave.
It's a big insult, Chris. And by the way, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Some of these people are actually hoping for racist attacks. They're hoping for something scrawled on a mosque, say, or a Polish community centre, which could and probably did happen umpteen times in the past, so that they can...
never reported about. And all these teams are reporting about it more now because they are determined to pin the racist card.
Exactly so. Well said, Chris. Chris, I've got to go, and your line is breaking up, and I've got to take a break.
Listener comrades of the world, unite! The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
On Talk Radio, we'll get you talking.
The paper review on Talk Radio with Metro. Grab your free copy tomorrow morning.
Now, a good friend of mine started Metro, a man called Murdoch McLennan. It looked in the balance all those years ago, and it has become an outstanding success, and never a day goes by without me picking up my copy of Metro. So let's look ahead to tomorrow's top stories with the assistant editor, Chris Cowley. Chris, welcome back.
Hello, George.
How are you going to fit all this politics into one newspaper?
Well, it's been just another exciting day in the world of politics in this country. I mean, tomorrow's main story is about Jeremy Corbyn and the crisis in the Labour Party, described today by Jack Straw as the worst crisis in the party's history.
I hope you've pointed out that he may be facing war crimes charges on the 6th of July.
Well, that may be the case, but we're not tomorrow because we might have to wait until then to do that, George.
It's really quite galling for people like me to hear him described on the television as a senior party figure without anyone pointing out that when Chilcot reports, by all accounts, including in your own family of papers, he's one of the people that's going to be on the receiving end of the most trenchant attack.
Well, if that's the case, we will definitely be dealing with it.
I have every faith in that.
But I mean, at the moment it's a bit of a fiasco, as in the Conservative Party, they're in a bit of turmoil as well.
They are, yeah. That's kind of going less noticed. But I expect once this leadership campaign gets underway, there's going to be quite a bit of trouble in the Tories, especially if they try and keep Boris off the ballot.
Well, I don't know how you're going to stop Boris at the moment. I mean, Stephen Crabb's put his name forward today, and it's looking like Theresa May is in the wings. We've got a Fox and a Hunt, Jeremy Hunt and Liam Fox, and it's all going to be absolutely fascinating in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Will you take a view on who should be the Tory leader? I mean, I don't think Metro's that kind of paper, is it? It's not up itself like some of the grander titles that think anybody reads their editorials.
No, we don't. We try to play everything straight down the middle and let our readers decide for themselves.
And then there's Istanbul now, this breaking story. Has that come too late for you?
No, we're changing a page as we speak. Obviously, it broke in the last hour or so, and it's like anything in these situations. It's getting the right information out of out of the place when it's gone off. And at the moment, we've got 10 dead, 20 injured, and there were 2 suicide bombers. But
and also a bit of gunfire too. I saw.
Yeah,
somebody mounting some enfilade fire against the security services when they turned up. It looks extremely bloody.
It's horrible. It is really horrible.
Now, on a lighter note, although how this could be a lighter note, you've got a story about a big snake and one without 2 legs.
Well, that's right. It's this snake slithered behind a gas fire, and the lady owner, who Jane Boer is her name, from Gainsborough in Lincolnshire, she was holding on to one end to stop it going up the flue, and then trying to get the fire brigade out to help her. So there's this sort of farcical pictures of the fire brigade arriving and trying to hold the hold the snake and pull it out and all this sort of thing while they dismantled the fire. I mean, it's sort of like a carry-on, a bit like Westminster, I
suppose. There's so many metaphors that come to mind with that story, Chris. I can't wait to read it. Thanks very much for joining us. That's Chris Cowley, Assistant Editor of Metro, and that was the Paper Review with Metro. Get your fix of news, sport and showbiz every weekday morning. Pick up your free copy of Metro tomorrow.
The Paper Review on Talk Radio with Metro. Grab your free copy tomorrow morning.
Now, tomorrow on the Paul Ross Full Set Breakfast, after a huge vote of no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn, Paul speaks with one of his former shadow cabinet who's leading the charge to oust him as Labour leader. Paul will also be joined by the Scottish MEP who received a standing ovation in the European Parliament for pleading with Brussels not to let Scotland down. I have to keep a straight face reading this stuff. And ahead of Brit Marcus Willis's second-round clash with Roger Federer at Wimbledon, Paul will be chatting to Marcus's mum to find out how she's feeling before the biggest match in her son's life. All that and the day's breaking news stories tomorrow morning from 6 on Talk Radio. Paul Ross's breakfast show is actually brilliant. It's the best breakfast show on radio by far. Now, do I have on the line? I do. Former Tory Cabinet Minister, former leadership contender, and prominent Brexiteer. I think I'm not being unjust. A man who has been opposed to the European Union, root and branch, for as long as I've known him, which is longer than we both care to remember. John Redwood, thanks for joining me.
Good evening, George. Good to hear your voice.
And
yes,
you, John.
I've been consistent. I've always thought it was undemocratic and not working in Britain's interests, so I'm very pleased with the views of the British people.
You must be. Now, we were discussing earlier, Nigel Farage and me last night, and someone from Leave.eu this evening, Mr. Tice, one of the founders of it. So let me run it past you. There are some signs, at least some people think so, and I'm one of them, that the Tory leaders of the Brexit campaign, some of them might not have been entirely serious. It's not just that they didn't expect to win, it might be that they didn't actually want to win.
Well, I hope that's not right. I've talked to them recently, and they assure me that they accept the full verdict of the United Kingdom people. And as they were very actively involved in the Leave campaign, they know exactly what the Leave campaign promised. I think the three main things that were clearly promised and which the British public voted for were the overarching one: we want back control, we want to make our own laws, impose our own taxes. Second one was we want our contributions back because we'd like to spend those on health and other priorities here at home. And thirdly, we want to have a fair migration system so that we treat everybody from around the world, including Europe, on a similar basis. And those were three very important popular issues. And my understanding is no senior Leave politician on the Conservative side wants to resile from any of that.
Well, except the last one is not compatible with what we might call the Norwegian model of access to the free market, paying the money in, and accepting the free movement of labour.
No, well, indeed, and that's exactly why the Leave campaign ruled out the Norwegian model and the Swiss model quite early on in the campaign.
It's not really being ruled out by Boris and Michael Gove, is it?
Oh, I can assure you they have ruled it out, and we were very clear in the Leave campaign in ruling it out. The Remain campaign always wanted to muddy the water by saying we'd probably do a Norway or an Albania or a Switzerland, and we all said the same thing. We want a British answer, and the British answer will not include sending contributions to Brussels, and it will not include having an EU-imposed migration policy.
I mean, why can't we go back to... I opposed it in 1975 when we last had a chance, but why can't we go back to just having a common market? Why do we have to have a political union and a currency union in almost all of the European Union countries? What's wrong with having an agreement that we'll all trade with each other, but we'll all decide our own laws, and we'll all decide who comes into our country and who must leave it?
Well, that's what a lot of British people have just voted for by a clear majority, and probably quite a number of people on the Remain side would like that. They were just worried there might be unforeseen consequences, and we need to show that those fears or exaggerated or groundless. As to what the other member states want, that really is a matter for their democracies to decide. Quite a lot of them do seem to want much more integration. One of my main reasons for favouring exit at this time is I think Britain's getting in the way. If you have a single currency, George, you need to have a common government to back it up. You need to have taxpayers to back it up. You need to have common decision-making over taxing, spending, borrowing. They're groping towards that. Britain's resistance to more integration was getting in the way, so I think we'll make it easier for them.
Yes, although there is a dog-in-the-manger approach to it, a response to it, clearly evident in some of the surly responses that we hear from Herr Juncker and Mr. Tusk and the President of the European Parliament today, don't you think?
Well, I would say let's leave it a few days or weeks, because they've had a shock. They really didn't want this answer. They don't want to lose the UK. They value the contributions we make financially and sometimes politically. And I can understand why they're a bit shocked, because the establishment just didn't see it coming. They all strangely thought they were going to win. But I think when they look at it after the summer holidays, when we have a new Prime Minister to sort the whole thing out for us, I trust they're going to say, we value Britain as a partner in so many ways. We want to trade with them, invest in each other's countries, have student exchanges, do all those other things that normal countries do. And so we mustn't get in the way of those things happening.
Now let me declare an interest on my final question to you. Isn't it the case that a Prime Minister selected by a political party but not by the country, which is certainly not unprecedented, and Gordon Brown was one of those, but he wasn't going into negotiations of such great moment. Don't you think that the new British Prime Minister, whomsoever it is, really should seek a mandate from the British public in a general election before going there with a plan that he can lay out or she can lay out for us in advance?
No, I don't agree with that, because we're not short of mandates. The Conservative Party has a majority and has a mandate from the 2015 manifesto and election, and we've got a lot of work to do to fulfil that mandate. And we now have an additional mandate for Parliament as a whole from the referendum, which is very clear about what they want Parliament to do. And as you rightly say, it is our tradition that from time to time Prime Ministers need to be replaced, and this can happen without triggering a general election through a democratic process in the party. The further point I'd make is that everybody should have expected us to replace the Prime Minister at some point in this Parliament without reference back to the public, because we did very clearly and honestly tell people that Mr. Cameron intended to resign at some point during this Parliament.
How do you think he got on today? Are you hearing anything from his dinner with the other leaders?
I haven't heard a lot. No, just what is out there. I'm sure David is a very affable gentleman when he does these things for our country, so I'm sure he would have done his best to smooth some of the ruffled feathers.
He is a smoothie, but it takes quite a bit of smoothing.
Yes, this was not easy for him, given where he was coming from on it, but he's a professional and he knew he was speaking for our country, and it's surely in all our interests, whether we were in favour of Remain or Leave, to do this professionally in a friendly way, to make sure there's as little damage as possible, so that we can enjoy the upside which people who want to leave think is there for the taking.
Great to hear your voice again, John. Thanks for joining me. John Redwood, a veteran Member of Parliament, former Cabinet Minister, former leadership contender, and might be able to get a few more calls in after this.
Controversial conversation and cutting-edge current affairs comment with the notorious B-I-G-G.
The mother of all talk shows with George Galloway on Talk Radio.
Listen, this guy's a nightmare. He's not a great guy, folks.
I'm actually in tears at the brilliance of our creative department. That was some rap, I must say. Mr. Bitt says Boris was just the head of the debating team for Leave. His training at Eton made him perfect for the role. And Jag says, for an overall majority these days, you need to be more centre-left, not totally left like the 1970s. Well, listen, Jag, I was in the 1970s, and Mr. Wilson and Mr. Callaghan, they weren't anything that could be called totally left. Let's go to Aberdeenshire, talk to Ty. Ty, welcome to the show.
Hi, George. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. The better for hearing you. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, I was watching the Scottish Parliament debate today about the...
My goodness, what, were you in jail? I mean, does anybody watch the Scottish Parliament on television?
I don't know, it was on earlier, so I was watching it. And they're debating, like, Nicola Sturgeon is going to the EU Parliament to try and keep Scotland's place in the EU. I'm just wondering, how is this all going to work? I'm confused.
Well, you should be confused because she's confused and her voters must be confused. First of all, 37% of SNP voters voted leave in the European Union referendum, almost exactly the proportion of Labour voters that voted to leave in Britain as a whole, and Corbyn's getting crucified for that, whilst Nicola Sturgeon's being lionised for her supposed triumph. It's going to be a very difficult ask. It's a double dunt. She's going to ask, she hopes, ask the Scottish people not just to leave Britain, a democratically elected union, and join another union, and she'd have to join it. She'd have to make application to join it. But she's not just asking that, because as a new entrant into the European Union, you have to join the Euro. You have to join the Eurozone. How's that going, Ty? How's that likely to play on the streets of Scotland? What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. I was actually looking at the arguments, like if they did have a second independence referendum, and they seem to be a lot weaker than they were in the last referendum, I think.
I believe so. Certainly I'll be fighting it, and I'll be fighting to persuade the Scottish people to say no all over again. As you say, it's even worse than the proposition last time. You'd have to join the euro. At least last time they were pretending that they would be able to use the pound. Ty, I'm pressing on only because I've got so many callers. James is in Cardiff, and up next. Go ahead, James.
Hello, George. Great
Hi.
show.
Thank you, mate. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm not sure, like, this whole referendum thing. Not sure it's the right decision.
You're not? Okay, tell me why.
Well, when Ireland joined, they didn't have to nominate English as official EU language because, we already had. Now, the French are warning that it's no longer going to be an official EU language, and then the Irish are going to be getting all their documents in Gaelic. Yeah. So that's going to be a bit inconvenient for them, if nothing else.
All right. Thanks for expressing that, James. Can't pretend that I understood it. Pat is in Shaftesbury in Dorset. Let's hear. Okay, sorry. Adam's in Manchester. He's first. Go ahead, Adam.
Hi, George. Okay, mate?
I'm good. Thanks for calling, mate. Go ahead.
Yeah, what it is, I was just wondering what your thoughts are on John McDonnell. And the reason that I do ask is because even though I've been impressed with Corbyn, I've been sort of super impressed with McDonnell.
Yeah,
and
he's a very canny fellow. My last action in Parliament was a filibuster between me, him and Jeremy Corbyn. The three of us, at their invitation, I joined in because they knew I was a bit of a parliamentary speaker and I could spin it out. And we did. We talked out the government's plans on the transport front and delayed something bad happening. So I've worked with these two people for a very long time, Adam.
Well, the thing is, what I was thinking is, do you think it's too late for sort of a compromise where you could say that, as long as we can keep John McDonnell as the Shadow Chancellor, that Corbyn could maybe say, right, you choose your figurehead, but they've got to come out and support McDonnell.
Well, they wouldn't do it because they hate McDonnell as much as they hate Corbyn. And
would you not think in these times when it's a little bit up in the air that they might be able to sort of bash out a deal that makes everybody happy?
No, that wouldn't make them happy. That wouldn't make them happy because they hate McDonnell and what he stands for just as much as they hate Jeremy Corbyn. McDonnell is 100% behind Jeremy Corbyn. So am I. Adam, thanks for the call. Pat in Shaftesbury in Dorset.
Hi, George. God bless your show and
Thank you.
The work you do. I'm a big leaver of the UK, even though I'm from Ireland. I live here for quite a while, and I believe in taking part in, and I believe this is the right thing for the UK. I want to just say two things, two facts. I'd like to reassure Remainers that there's lots of reasons, but I just want to mention two reasons.
Yep.
Yeah. First one is the 80 billion that's printed every month by the ECB, every month. It's printed to keep the ship afloat, the EU afloat, to stop a deflationary spiral. And this was not mentioned throughout the campaign whatsoever. I'm sure you may be aware of it yourself.
Of course.
Of course, yeah, right. That's the first one. If someone's got that's 80 billion a month. That's 12 times 80 billion, 960 billion. That's 1 trillion a year. The EU has to print to keep it going, to stop it going into deflation. It's trying to actually increase inflation to keep it going. Second thing is I want to talk about is Ireland's experience of the EU.
A very, very bitter one.
I would. We know about Greece. We know about France voted against the constitution and was bypassed. Netherlands voted against the EU constitution and was bypassed with the Lisbon Treaty. Ireland voted against Lisbon and was asked to vote the right way the second time. Besides that, it's the 65 billion that Ireland was the Irish taxpayer was forced to pay to bail out the European banks. I believe that was the case, yeah?
Indeed.
Yeah. And the second one is, since the crash in 2008, there's been high immigration from Ireland. A lot went to Canada, and even more went to Australia. And thankfully, London was here to take others, and there was about 70 to 80,000 a year left Ireland. And where was the EU? The Remainers said, we're losing all the opportunities of work in Europe. There was nowhere to work in Europe. There's no opportunities anywhere.
The European Union economies are on the ropes. The only places that have seen significant flows of British people are the retirement homes in the Costa del Sol or the Algarve. And those lucky few, like the Kinnock family, who found sinecures in the European Parliament and in the European Commission. Pat, I've got to press on. Ahmed is in London. He's up next. Go ahead, Ahmed.
Hi, George.
Hi.
First of all, thanks for your support for real Labour, that is Corbyn.
Thank you.
Not like these 130, I don't know what kind of Labour they are.
No.
So my question is...
New Labour became non-Labour and then ended up anti-Labour. That's my take.
Yeah, true, exactly. So we know that now Tony Blair is probably... He owns around 100 million and he works in a bank. I don't know what kind of a Labour leader was that. He was probably a follower of a...
Well, he's about to get his comeuppance in the Chilcot report in the next few days.
Hopefully. And my question is, what kind of incentives are being offered to these MPs to go against Corbyn, so probably Corbyn is against these austerity and privatization policies, and so what can these?
I don't think they've been offered any incentive. Let me paraphrase Lord Acton. Thank God you cannot bribe or twist the average British journalist. But when you see what unbribed he'll do, you realise there's no reason to. And the same goes for these MPs today. Nobody had to bribe them. Nobody had to bully them. They did it because of what they are. And what they are is bloated with self-importance, a sense of entitlement, a sense that they're better than those who put them there. That's what motivated them today. That and a distaste for the hurly-burly of left-wing politics. But they're about to get their comeuppance. And I'll be back, God willing, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock.